Hello and welcome to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
Before we introduce who our guest is, show's purpose.
Our show's purpose is connecting people of service through stories of service. And we do that by, having amazing guests on, like David, and, make sure to connect people to service one way, shape, or form.
And Rotary.
And Rotary.
And Rotary.
Rotary.
Yeah, and so our guest today, who Joe teased, is David L. Sheppard. He is a fellow Rotarian and past president for the Minnewaska Rotary Club and is currently serving as the service chair.
Pumped. Let's get it going.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great show.
Here we go. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
I'm Chad Larson. We'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
Before we introduce who our guest is today, Chad is going to remind us of our sponsorship.
We want to thank Russell Hampton for sponsoring the show. They're the #1 printer for Rotary in the country. If you're watching online, you can check out some of the swag we got on the table here, and mugs and cutting board, hats.
I see their stuff all over now. Like it's
really?
Yeah, the reticular activating system has been activated.
Here it is.
Got the 4-way test on the koozie.
Yeah, they're great.
That's pretty cool. And they can help you with your other printing needs. So reach out to Russell Hampton at russellhampton.com.
Russell's going to correct you, though. It's the 4-way beer test, by the way. So
Is it cold?
I have a little closer. Is it ice cold? Is there enough for all concerned? So anyways, anywho, we have a very special guest on today, joining us from not up north. He is on a vacation right now, and we're a little envious of it, but his name is David L. Sheppard, and he is past president for his current Rotary Club. That's the Minnewaska Rotary Club, and he is also serving as the current service chair. Welcome, David. We're happy to have you.
You there?
David?
I might have lost the internet.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you very much.
Yes, we're happy to have you. So tell us, where is it that you live? And then let's actually just do a little brief touch on where you're vacationing right now too.
Well, we live in Glenwood, Minnesota, which is about an hour and a half from Fargo, North Dakota, a couple hours out of the cities there. Mm-hmm. And right now we are vacationing in Kiowa Island, which is off the coast of South Carolina, very close to Charleston. And it's a beautiful day, and we're happy to be here, and we're anxious to get home.
There you go.
But hopefully not too anxious. I mean,
yeah. You just never know what the weather will do here. So
yeah, we've been here for 6 weeks. And so we're just about to the point where we're saying, yeah, it was a good trip, and we're ready to go, and our batteries are rejuvenated, so we're ready.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Minnesota will welcome you back, and hopefully it'll be warm as it's welcoming you back too. So now you are a fellow Rotarian, correct?
Yes, I joined what was at the time Glenwood Rotary, and I retired in 2017. Both my wife and I retired and moved permanently up to Glenwood. And one of our friends through the church we belong to said to me, well, now that you're retired, are you, do you know what you want to do? And I said, well, I want to do something. I'm not sure what that is. And he said, well, why don't you come over to the Rotary Club for a lunch and find out what we're all about. So I feel
like so many Rotarian stories start that way. Yeah, come over for a free lunch.
So I did that, and I wasn't quite sure after the lunch, quite honestly. I didn't know whether Rotary was something for me or not. At that time, our club was steeped in, I say this affectionately, by the way, was steeped with a bunch of old farts. And now I have to be transparent. I'm an old fart. I'm well over 70. And so I'm in that genre, but I'm a young old. Well, I wasn't sure whether it was for me. I came back for a couple of lunches, and then, of course, I met up with the very famous Lloyd, and Lloyd convinced me that I could help make a change in the club. And so really throughout the first 4 years, a whole bunch of younger people, younger thinking people joined the club, and we've kind of streamlined the club, updated the club. A lot of new members came in, a lot of younger members came in. And so we evolved into the club we are today, which is very service-based organization.
Very cool.
It is. It's really cool. And so when did you officially gain membership in your Rotary?
It was November of 2017.
Okay. So you've got some good years under your belt.
And you must have dove right in to be a past president already.
Well, unbeknownst to me, they had a plan, which I wasn't aware about. And, once you start stepping up and showing some leadership, well, then that's all they need to see. So you kind of get thrust into this, whether you kind of want to or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, it was a real good experience leading a Rotary club, and I learned a lot. And I'm also glad it's over, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a lot of work in that year. We've seen, I should say.
Yes.
None of us have served as president, but
Not yet.
We've had a lot on.
Not yet.
Sure.
Not yet. Is the big thing.
What was your career that you retired from in 17?
Well, I had just almost a 50-year career in the luxe menswear industry. I was a independent sales rep. I had my own repping agency. I represented 10 different companies, and I actually was the definition of a traveling salesman. I had 14 states, and I called on all the high-end stores in those cities and communities, and it was a great career. And I retired, however, right about at the right time, because people don't dress up like they used to, and the whole world has changed with regard to apparel and so forth. So I kind of went out right up on top, and I didn't know that I could have stayed in it for another 5 or 6 years, but you can't get time back. And I wanted to spend more time at home with the grandkids. And when you're traveling like I did, it was overnight about 42 weeks a year. So you weren't home much.
Yeah. Wow.
Got to have a lot of hotel points, though.
Yeah. I tell you, I really miss that too. Yeah, for sure.
And you're currently, so now you're retired, you're up in the Glenwood area, and you are currently serving as the service chair.
Correct.
How has that been?
That's been really fun. I've really enjoyed it. I've been service chair for actually a couple of years now. And it's fun not only to be, but it's fun to help get the people to perform the service. I enjoy reaching out to our club members and convincing them that I need them for this project or that project. And there is at times of the year it's quite time consuming, but I've got it honed down pretty good now, where I know what I need when I need it. And luckily for me, our club steps up. Whenever you ask for help, they're the first ones to say, yeah, let's go.
That's really wonderful and just a testament to Rotary as a whole.
Yes. Yeah.
David, do you have a favorite service project you guys have completed?
So when Pope County Food Drop is once a month, and we meaning Pope County, because that's where we live, through the United Way, they bring food to a specific church, and then it's up to church volunteers and Rotary members who volunteer to pack the food in bags, and then that takes about 4.5 hours. And then from about 1 to 4 o'clock, people come and pick up their food. And it's always quite moving because you know that the people who are driving up, at least a certain percentage of them, they're living in their vehicles. And it's a particularly poignant time when you step back and you're giving these foodstuffs to these families. Some of them are families, some of them are single individuals, some of them are married, but a large majority of them, can't afford anything. And it makes you count your blessings, because I've got a full stomach and I don't have to sleep in my car, and I've got a nice home to go to. So now, not all of the recipients are in quite that bad shape, but it really makes you realize that food insecurity is all around us. And even if you don't see it, lots of times we don't see these things, but we hear about them, we read about them. But when you see it firsthand, it really makes an impact on your life. And the Rotarians in our club who volunteer for this every month, it's really impacted everybody, and they love it because they can show kindness and love and understanding to people who really need it quite badly.
That's so good. And I bet it's like you said, it's just a moment to express gratitude for the things that we have that others do not.
Well, and you talk about impact too. I mean, it has to have a huge impact within the county. So, I mean, the need is so high and endless, but being able to meet some of that need is got to be really gratifying.
It is. And, isn't that what service, at least a part of service, is all about, is that the server gets when they serve. And that's huge. That's a really big draw. This will segue right into the biggest signature program that our club has, which is Meals on Wheels.
Okay.
And so there's a little backstory here. If you don't mind, I'll give it to you. So
we love stories. We love them.
All those years that I was traveling on the road, and of course I drove almost everywhere I went, except if I was going to New York.
No airline miles.
But boy, did I it was around 50 or 60,000 miles a year in my car, and in my truck, I should say. And so that gives you time while you're driving, especially going out west, to think about your life, everything. And in my case, I would always think, boy, I would really like to be in service of some kind. But being a traveling man, I could not be, because I was never home long enough to get involved in any service. And that includes any kind of service, even our church. And so I always had this goal when I retired that I wanted to do that. So fast forward, I retire, and then I join Rotary, and I start to get into the service mode in my mind. The same gentleman who, well, wait a minute, I'll back up a little bit and say, so Polk County has a Meals on Wheels program, and it's based out of Glenwood because that's the county seat right there. And so we have a limited amount of mileage that we can drive to. And the program Meals on Wheels in Glenwood was having a problem keeping drivers or getting drivers for the need that was really within the Glenwood, Starbuck, Villard area. And there was a piece in the paper, the Polk County Tribune, in the opinion piece, that a resident wrote who was a driver. And he made it clear that, listen, our program is going to come to an end. If we can't get more drivers, then we're going to just have to close up shop. So at that time, I had started already at Meals on Wheels, just as a singular driver, and was getting used to all that. And I read the piece, and the guy who invited me to join the Rotary lunch one day said, because he read the same piece, and he said, David, we should be able to help Meals on Wheels. And he said, why can't we be the administrator of that program? And I thought he was nuts. I mean, I didn't know what that entailed, but I knew it was a big responsibility. So we parted ways. And then in the next couple of days, I kind of got to thinking about it. And I thought, well, wait a minute. If the issue is getting drivers, and then the other half of the issue was the lady who cooked all the meals for Polk County Glenwood Meals on Wheels, she was also trying to get drivers, find substitute drivers. Lots of times she'd be with hardly any drivers and she'd have to do it herself. And so it was becoming, I talked to her, and it was becoming a real problem with her. There's only so many hours in a morning that you can do these kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we sat down with her, I did, and said, look, of the drivers, we will secure the drivers, we will secure the schedule, and all you have to worry about is cooking. And of course, she thought that was the best idea she'd ever heard.
Less on her plate. This is good.
And so we started on that. And unbeknownst to me, again, the whole burden kind of fell on me to, okay, let's go get some drivers and let's make up the schedules. And that was and still is, a premium challenge to do that. But the long and the short of it is, fast forward. So now we're up to about 45 drivers that we call on. The schedule is produced a month and a half in advance. It takes that long to schedule everything that we have, because when you schedule that many people on a schedule, some of them get back to you and say, no, I'm not available that day. I'm going to be gone that week. So you're constantly having to juggle people. So if I work on a 45-day basis, by the time that month is due, everybody has agreed to do it, and we're off to the races. Mm-hmm. Then the problem is that you always get people who are ill, people who, for whatever reason, can't drive that day, last minute cancellations. And so you're constantly trying to call on your substitutes and also, when need be, if I need to, so I'll drive 2 or 3 routes myself just to get it done. But by and large, I don't think it can work any smoother than that. It's just an ongoing thing that you have to do. And really, when you look at the numbers, we're a small community, but we have about 45 drivers. We only have 4 routes, but each route then has many, many deliveries.
Wow.
And then you multiply that times 5 or 6 days a week. And then you multiply that out by 12 months a year. We're delivering just north of 8,000 meals on a calendar basis. And that's a lot. That's a lot of organization. That's a lot of commitment forget my commitment. It's the people who make this run are the individual drivers, because without them, it just wouldn't exist.
Sure.
So that's an ongoing deal. And at least for the foreseeable future, until I get really tired of doing it, it'll continue to be an ongoing deal. And I'd like to think that whenever I then have somebody that I could train in my place.
What percentage of the drivers are Rotarians?
Well, it started out initially where once we took over the program, probably half the drivers were Rotarians. And then through attrition, through moving away, et cetera, now it's probably only 25%.
Okay.
And a lot of Rotarians, they kind of want to do that, but they're kind of afraid. I'm not sure why, but there seems to be a fear factor of going up to somebody's house, knocking on the door and providing them a meal. And delivering isn't for everybody. I get that. I really enjoy it because to get back to what Kelly, you had said earlier, the satisfaction of that, being able to do that. But all of the drivers that we have, they do it for the satisfaction of serving the community. I'll never forget one of the first week I was there delivering meals. I delivered it to an elderly gentleman whose wife had passed away, I don't know, a couple of weeks, a month previous to that. And he's living in his home all alone. And naturally, he was still in grieving mode. And here I come, delivering his meal. And these people, yes, they want the meal. They want the nutrition. They want the food. But you know what they want more than anything?
Interaction.
They want fellowship with somebody, whoever. And so I'm at his door, and a lot of them invite you to sit down, talk to me. What's going on? And so a lot of these people really become kind of a distant friend. You know them,
Sure.
You know their families. Well, in this particular case, he actually asked me to witness to the Lord to him, which was really an honor. And it really made me focus in on, boy, this is much more than giving someone a warm meal.
Yeah. Well, and, to your point about the fellowship component of it, but to go back to your point about the individuals such as yourself that are delivering the meals and, the impact that has, but it's providing a purpose, right? A something that's happening for the greater good within themselves, but then also the community as well.
Yeah. the whole thing about service, and I was guilty of this. I'm thinking, geez, service means you have to do a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to build a water project in Uganda. You have to. I particularly read as I watched your podcast on Watts for Love. I
Yep.
believe it was, and
Mhm.
I thought, man, that is just so cool. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
But but service doesn't have to be a big deal. Service can be something as small as delivering a meal. It could be raking your elderly neighbor's yard. It could be taking up his trash container to the street so the garbage can be picked up.
Mhm.
Service takes lots of different forms. And
Mhm.
I think one of the inhibiting factors for a lot of people is they think they want to serve, but they don't know how to go about something big. We're trying to sell them on think small. Think small. Think your community, think your street, think your church, and all of a sudden it becomes much easier in your mind to manage what that service could be.
Well, like anything else,
Mhm.
it's a muscle.
Yeah,
If you haven't worked the muscle out, you just don't. It just seems like such a big stretch to do a large service project versus, deliver a meal, have a conversation with somebody, and be impactful to them. I think too is like we get so stuck on the service component and we forget about how it's received.
Mhm.
Like I think that's a perfect example of the story that you told. Is the service component was small, but the reception of the service was big. Like
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about how meaningful that was to that gentleman's life, especially with what he was going through and everything
Mhm.
else. And we forget about the impact of what service does and not just the service itself.
I can truthfully say that whether it's Pope County Food Drop or whether it's Meals on Wheels, that every single person that I come in contact with, and I know this is true for all the drivers, the recipients make such a big deal in thanking you for bringing that in and being there. And that just always struck me as just amazing, because I would have never known that it would have meant so much.
Mhm.
What was the program like during COVID? So did you guys shut down for an extended period of time and then
No,
re-engage?
actually, well, I think, as I recall, the beginnings of COVID, 4 years ago, right about now, I guess.
Crazy.
Yep.
This is nuts.
The beginnings were, we kind of shut down, but then we kind of got it going again once things settled down. And of course, we had to wear the masks. In a lot of cases, we would leave the meal outside the door. We'd knock on the door so they'd know their meal is there, especially if it's the winter time and it's 20 below, come get your meal. So we kind of made it through there, but it did impact the drivers, because at that time, many drivers said, I'm no longer interested in driving because of the obvious fear of what COVID brought. And so it put an additional burden on the drivers that we had,
Mhm.
but we got through it okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sure, yeah, the COVID aspect probably, the fear of that, but I got to imagine when you're not having that personal connection when you're out delivering too, that has to have an impact on you. Because as you told the story about it, you benefit from the conversation and the fellowship as much as the other person. And I got to imagine whether it was said or not, that had an impact too.
Sure. And, that whole time was very fearful because nobody knew exactly what's going to happen. When we left here 2 days after COVID really started in the States back in 2020, and we drove back to Minneapolis, And if we passed 4 cars, I would have been really, really shocked. I mean, it was like Armageddon. And, but, once people got used to what the boundaries were, both the recipient of the meals and the drivers, then we started picking up a driver again here and there.
Mhm.
But the driver issue never goes away because it's always changing and people are always coming into the program to drive and leaving the program. So the need for additional drivers is out there every month. And we have ads in the paper a couple of times a year asking for drivers, which is Glenwood Lutheran Church. We print it in that bulletin. And here's the thing, can you spend 30 minutes a month serving someone? And if you look at it that way, most people would say, sure, I've got a half hour that I can spare a month. And getting one driver makes a huge difference. Getting 2 drivers is a bonus.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, earlier this year, we lost 10 drivers because they moved away, they retired, they did this. And that just really impacted what we could do. We're crawling back.
45% of your drivers. Yeah.
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 Have
So-
you ever tapped other Rotary clubs that are close in need for drivers, or do you?
We've thought about that, and that might be something that we could do in the future. The closest Rotary club to us would be, I guess, Sauk Center, which is about maybe a half hour away. One of the problems is if you expand the program, then and the drivers come from that far away. Well, it's really hard to get a driver to drive a half hour in to get the meals, do a route, and then drive another half hour back. You're asking a lot of somebody who probably may or may not have that much time to spare.
Sure.
In the winter months, I'd imagine sometimes you deal with some tough roads. Not this year.
Yeah.
But does that have a pretty big impact at times when we have a winter?
It does. There's always a certain amount of drivers, particularly elderly drivers, who, when it snows, when I wake up in the morning and we've got 3, 4, 5 inches of snow on the ground, I know I'm going to have cancels. And but you prepare yourself for that, and you've got your backup sub drivers that you can call on. So you've got the icy roads. Actually, the snow isn't as bad as icy roads.
Yeah.
Sure.
If it's really bad, then Meals on Wheels will close for the day, and we'll make an announcement on the local radio station that no one will be getting their meals.
Okay. Well,
Which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Do you go make them up the next day, or just keep on the regular schedule?
We'll just keep on the regular route. Yep.
gotcha.
Yeah, I could see that cascading on you.
Yeah.
Where
Mhm. David, you had mentioned that. So not only do you have this service component through Meals on Wheels, but you do quite a bit of service through your church as well. Do you want to touch on that?
Sure. Let's go back to a comment earlier. Service can mean anything when you're serving. And in my heart, serving God means serving others. And so this is a way that I can serve my Lord by serving his children. In the church itself, which is Glenwood Lutheran Church, I'm on the board of trustees. That takes a significant amount of time. The trustees are the ones who are responsible for the financial health of the church. And that encompasses a lot of different things. We're the ones with the purse strings. We're the ones that spend the money or not. Leadership can mean, good leadership, by the way, can mean not spending money. And so there's that aspect. Of course, there's the normal things like ushering. I'm called upon few times a year to be a narrator for particular church events, cantatas, or something of that nature.
Okay.
And and then there's the annual meatball supper, which you get highly involved in. My job is cooking potatoes. So we have about 800 pounds of potatoes that I and my team have to scrub, clean, cut, and cook. And
wow.
that's how
That sounds like a super fun job.
You better be good at it by the end of that.
Oh my
right?
God.
Like, the repetition.
When you said meatballs, I was thinking spaghetti, but I should have assumed with a Lutheran church it was probably Swedish meatballs.
There you go.
So that
I went to SNL, but
all of that work is fun because what does it create? It creates fellowship.
Mhm.
And everybody's working hard, and fellowship is at the heart of so much of what we do at the church and what we do at Rotary, that it becomes, all of a sudden, it's a real big part of your life.
Where did you live before you moved to Glenwood?
So born, raised, and lived in the Twin Cities my whole life.
Okay.
My wife and I lived in South Minneapolis for probably 35 years, raised our son down there. And he went off and became a naval aviator through Annapolis. And we had this big house and said, we don't belong here anymore. And so we had already been living part-time in Glenwood.
Okay.
And so we decided to make a permanent move up there. And then we expanded our living quarters a little bit, and living on a lake, it's a dream. And, talk about blessings overflowing. We're a perfect illustration of that.
I got to check out this Glenwood area. It seems to be quite popular. I got to check out what the buzz is all about.
That's funny because Lloyd is a beekeeper.
I know.
Beekeeper on the lake.
I do want to mention something that, and I really like that we touched on your church service as well as your Rotary service, because, this show's about finding service wherever you can. And, we had Mark Shockey on, and talking about the relationship between, that for him. And I think it's important to talk about that service comes in many different forms and many different functions.
Absolutely.
And it's important to make sure that it's flowing through all of them instead of just being a Rotarian, serving as a Rotarian. It should impact your life in all ways as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Very well put.
When you moved up there, had you full-time? You were there part-time for a while. Did you know a lot of people before you made the full-time move from being there for a while, or did it really get entrenched when you made
just people? We knew some people through church, even though we weren't living there at the time. We knew some people, but I didn't really get to know a lot of people on a personal basis and become friends with. Rotary really propelled that. It made that happen. And then once you're in Rotary, well, then Rotary opens all sorts of doors for developing new friendships. And so, that's one of the benefits that I don't think is talked about enough at Rotary, is that it just opens up doors of everything in your life.
Mm.
That's why I asked. I was hoping that was going to be the answer. But I assume because I've talked to a couple other people, in my short time in Rotary that have said the same thing, whether they've been transplants or moved to a new area or retiring and now have time,
Yeah.
and they didn't have a large network of friends and fellowship, and Rotary has been that avenue. And it's,
I'm sure glad.
I mean,
that
I
we
work with
s-
a ton of relocation clients, and I'm always like, get involved in your local Rotaries. It's
Yeah.
typically a lot of your city officials are there, your
Mhm.
school board, school people, police, fire. I mean, small business, everything that you can think of
Yeah.
that can connect you very rapidly.
it's also
Yeah,
one of the friendships.
you don't have to be a big Rotary club to be an effective Rotary club. I know down in the
Oh,
cities there are some huge clubs that have zillions of members. Um, we're kind of envious of that a little bit, but on the other hand, um, in our own little way, we're as effective in our county, in our lives as big clubs can be. And so, you know, there is this thinking. It's like that big Uganda water project. You know, I gotta be involved in a big club. You don't. Small clubs can be just as effective and sometimes a little easier than the big clubs.
absolutely. Well, we have just a few more minutes here, David. I think maybe the last question we could end on is for those who are listening to the show right now and maybe are not Rotarians or just are unsure of what the next steps could look like, what's some advice that you would give them?
I guess the advice I would give would be to, especially if they're inclined to maybe want to get involved in service, but even if that's not on their mind right now, go online and read all about Rotary. There is a ton of information about Rotary and what the mission is and what Rotary does. And now, because Rotary has really changed a lot, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, where these clubs, I think, especially small clubs, really bring your passion to Rotary. If there's somebody out in the community that has a passion for, it could be whatever, Animal Humane Society, let's just say that, come to Rotary and then make the local Animal Humane Society one of your passions and something that you love and you can in. And I think that that's one of the things that Lloyd really pounded into my brain is bring what you want to do to this club and do it.
Good advice.
Yes, it is.
Do your research. I
David,
appreciate that.
David's the first person to say, hey, just go and research Rotary.
Yeah.
We've had what? I don't know, 80 interviews.
So
And
many,
the first
yeah.
one to say, just go and Rotary.
Research. Yeah. I
Sounds
think
like
it's so simple.
From his is what we asked here is go to a club meeting, and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that didn't convince that.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't work. That
doesn't
entry point
always
doesn't
work,
work.
yeah.
So, you know, if
Yep.
you learn about it before you get there or after,
Yeah.
that can help too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, this just was such a pleasure, David, to have you on and learn more about you and your background and your, the service that you do in many ways, shapes, and forms. So thank you for carving out time on your vacation.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys, and I enjoy your podcast a lot, and I think you're doing the Lord's work. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That was really, really kind of you. Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for listening to our guest today, David Sheppard. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson. We'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
That was a really nice episode.
Yeah, it was.
Aren't they all though?
Yeah, they really are.
I mean, we're all just enjoying this thing.
A few minor technical, but it really
yeah,
we worked through it, and I thought David really had a good message and told a good story.
He was a super trooper getting through those technical difficulties.
Yeah.
What I appreciated about David and his story is that he started to, towards the end of the interview, connect the dots for us as the listeners on all of the different ways that you can serve and then how it creates fellowship. Like that was a word that I put down and I circled like in big, like a big circle around it. So
yeah. And focusing again on small service. I think, you know, what I love about this show is we've focused on both. You know, large scale service where you're like, wow, hundreds of thousands of people are being impacted by this service project. And then his story where he talked about just helping a gentleman that was grieving from his wife's passing. And you're like, can you imagine the impact of that conversation to that gentleman that was? And,
and it's just the interaction that is so desired.
Yeah. I think, you know, we've had so many big guests on, or, you know, big scale projects on, and oftentimes they're working on them regularly all day, or, you know, it's their only job at this point, but they don't get to see and have that daily or weekly interaction. And you could hear from David how impactful that is on his life.
Yeah. Very boots on the ground.
Yeah.
To have that and see the impact every time and have those connections. It's kind of a new perspective that, you know, we've talked about smaller projects, but not really talked about how it impacts both the community and the individual.
Yes.
Well, I like to where you talked about efficiency of smaller clubs versus large clubs. And, you know, it kind of just makes you, you know, our entire goal feels like that we're supposed to be huge and awesome, but effective is really the way to go. That was my takeaway.
I agree. He was a great guest, and I'm glad that we had him on. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
It's time to stop searching
and start serving.
We'll see you next week.